My name is Tracy Mark. I'm a program manager at Metro. I'm here with my colleague, Allison Sherrick.
Hello. Hi, I'm Allison Sherrick. I'm a digital project and services manager at Metro. Nice to see you all today.
Yes.
Or your names at least. Yeah.
And we are the managers for this program. So we work really closely with the recipients of this grant throughout this grant cycle. And another thing is, this is a webinar. Sometimes we've done meetings in the past, so this is a webinar, which is a little bit different. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function, which is the bottom middle of your screen, to put them in, or you can email us and we're happy to meet with you and answer any questions you have. Okay, so I'm just going to also pop the program guide in the chat, because that is really where we're getting a lot of the information we're sharing. Everything you can find there and on the Metro website on the grants page. So let me share that as well. Okay. So, and also, if you feel comfortable, feel free to say hi in the chat. We'd love to know who's in the room with us. So if you feel comfortable sharing your name, or if you're affiliated with an institution, you can share that too. Okay, so with that, we can start moving. Okay, so I'm going to start. So welcome again. This is our digitization project grant. This is a grant that Metro's had for a really long time. Within the past 2 years now, it's under Allison and I's jurisdiction. So we're happy to bring it back. It's been really popular. We've gotten a ton of questions. So we're really excited to read your applications. So the initial call for applications was on Monday, March 11th, 2024, and the deadline is Friday, May 10th. The grant amount is $10,000 per selected project, up to, so it can be $10,000 or less. And then the grant period is from Monday, August 5th to Friday, May 30th. One thing to note about this grant, which I'm sure you've recognized reading through the guide, is that it's a short period. So we have just one application period where you submit, and then everything, and there's no back and forth like other grants would allow, like us to give you feedback. We do allow that at the end. Say if you don't receive the grant and you want to follow up with us and have a meeting and kind of talk through some of the feedback from the review council, then we're happy to do that. But really, this is a one-time sort of, you apply and then you find out whether you get it or not. So my recommendation is always use Allison and I as a resource. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. So just to go over the mission statement, Metro's Digitization Project Grant is designed to meet the needs of Metro members working on projects at various stages of the digitization lifecycle. Our aim is to create community capacity for digital collections while supporting our member institutions. By doing this, we endeavor to enable sustainable digital space making, cultural heritage resource exchange, access to collections materials from a spectrum of diverse viewpoints, and research support for individuals seeking information and resources related to metropolitan New York's history and unique communities. The program description: the primary purpose of this grant is to support digitization projects for Metro members in order to enhance the quality and accessibility of library and information resources in the metropolitan New York region. This program will enable Metro members to provide free and open access to materials in their collections that have not yet been digitized or are not currently publicly available. Metro members will also build institutional capacity, resulting in members being better positioned for future larger scale digitization projects. So in the previous slide, we mentioned that this is a grant for Metro members. And this, I think, comes up later as well, but it's worth restating a couple times. This is if you aren't a Metro member, then please become one I would say soon, just because that process takes a bit of time. And we can put a link to our membership page at the end in case you're interested. This is also linked in the program guide. Each institution is eligible to receive funding up to $10,000. The following should be considered when selecting collections to be funded through this project. We seek to provide support for useful and accurate content, rare and unique items, material that have a potential for enduring value in digital form, and materials that are beneficial to New York residents and community members. And the following should be considered when selecting materials within collections. We seek to fund digitization materials that highlight collections, best represent the community, are most requested by patrons, are difficult to access in physical form, and are cataloged or collections that are processed. So yes, this is a grant that really focuses on reformatting. I think it's worth stating because we've had quite a few questions around that. We're focused on digitization, but you're free to ask the questions, but it's a good thing to note here. And it's also nice to know what your projects are about. So even if you can't apply this cycle, it's good for us on the Metro side to understand your needs so we can adapt for future cycles.
So reiterating what Tracy shared earlier, only Metro member institutions located in New York City and Westchester County are eligible to apply. For more information about how to apply for a Metro membership, that is linked to in the program guide. You can also find that directly on metro.org/members that Tracy just shared. So if you have any questions about Metro membership or how that works, please reach out ahead of applying for the grant, and just make sure that your institution is a member and eligible. For final submission for the actual application for this grant, please use the Google form to submit your application. We strongly recommend using the PDF copy of the form to view and prepare your responses to the questions in advance of submitting. In terms of eligibility and requirements, just to go over a little bit more of the background for like the physical materials and the application form. So all materials, formats, including text, images, maps, newspapers, audio, and video materials that you would want to digitize from your collections are eligible. We've gotten a few questions asking, are oral histories eligible? Are video projects eligible? And the answer is yes. So along with your application form, you also need to include a timeline and budget outlining where and how the funds are utilized. The program guide has example templates for both of those things you can refer to and use for that purpose. Based on your project, your timeline and budget, and they can include one or more of the following categories: hardware, software, staffing, training, web design, promotion, and programming for how you're going to use that, PPE if it's necessary for your institution, for any programs that you have, and other kinds of services that are related to your project. One important thing to note is that direct compensation and/or fringe benefits for permanent employees are not considered eligible expenses for this grant program. Another facet of the Digitization Project grant is that we strongly encourage recipients of this grant to contribute copies of their materials, their digital collections, to Metro's Digital Culture of Metropolitan New York, or DCMNY, website once the grant period is over. DCMNY is a shared repository space that Metro hosts and provides. We provide this free online access to digital collections for our libraries, archives, museums, and historical societies located in and around New York City. Participating institutions are located in all of those counties that you see listed there. And as part of this process, we provide applicants and recipients with more information about participating in DCMNY, including contribution and metadata digitization guidelines. So I'm just going to quickly hop over to DCMNY. So this is the homepage for DCMNY. I'm going to put that in the chat. And from here, you can link at the bottom of the page to the contribution guidelines, which are here. The contribution guidelines they're broken into two parts. Metadata guidelines that go over the kind of metadata profile or elements that we're looking for, and digitization guidelines, which go over the file recommended practices for like the actual digitization assets. Once you reach out and you start talking to us about your collection and wanting to contribute, we also have a metadata template that you can use to prepare your materials for ingest into DCMNY. So just take a look around. This is a quick example of a project that was our collection that was submitted for a digitization grant, and they were awarded this, and then they shared their materials with us. So the New York Public Radio hosts their materials in their digitized collection in their own site, and they also shared a copy of their collection with us for us to share in our platform. So getting back to just let us know if you have any questions about DCMNY. We'll have that space at the end.
Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about reporting requirements. So if you were awarded this grant, this is a reimbursement-based grant, which is why it's also an institutional-based grant. We've had a couple people ask if like individual Metro members can apply. It's because we're sort of asking you to, spend the money first and then you'll be reimbursed for it. So phase 1 of this is August 5th, which is the first day of the grant period, through to January 17th. And then on January 17th, you will submit to us a reimbursement package. And then we'll reimburse you for everything you've spent in that period of time. And then the second period is from everything you spent from January 17th through May 30th. So May 30th, you'll send us another reimbursement package that reflects everything you spent during that time, and then you'll be reimbursed the second half. And what we're really looking for is we're looking at your budget that you submitted to us originally, and we're trying to see, and we're cross-referencing the expenses that the receipts that you give us versus what was in your original budget. And of course, every year sometimes things change, people's schedules, just like various things that are out of our control, and that's okay. We just ask that you let us know at least 6 weeks in advance so we can review those changes and then adapt them to your budget if need be. And also those changes can't be like, we need more money. It could be like, we're not going to use this line item, so can we substitute it with this? Those kinds of changes are we can work with. I can go into a little bit of detail what the reimbursement package looks like, but I will say you don't have to completely understand all of this right now. If you're awarded the grant, this is something that we go over well in advance of submitting a reimbursement package, and we go over it twice for each phase. So these are identical in what is required. So I'm just going to go over phase 1. So on Friday, January 17th, you would submit to us a written narrative of the work done between August 2024 and January 2025. You give us an updated budget, like with line items, basically explaining what you've spent. So a receipt, like a receipt, and then what it's for. You would give this to us in like a spreadsheet sort of format. And then you would give us the corresponding actual like copies of the receipts. So we could look at the receipt and we can look at your budget and we can say, that corresponds with that. And then you'd also include any invoices from contractors, for work being done. If you're hiring anyone to do anything, services, vendors, things like that, we would like to see a copy of those contracts or receipts. And then a W-9, which is how we will reimburse you. But yeah, this is something that we go over several times throughout the period, but it's just good for you to know in advance, keep all your receipts, obviously, as you're going through, because they will be accounted for later.
Okay, I'll be quick. I won't necessarily read through all the dates, but just important ones to keep in mind. The call for applications, grant is open. The applications are due by Friday, May 10th, 2024. So keep that in mind. Friday, May 17th is when the application packages are sent out for review to our advisory council, and more information about that a little later. And then the application reviews are due back from the advisory council on June 7th. So just so you know, there's going to be at least 1 month, month and a half probably before you'll hear back from us. So by July 1st, 2024, all grant applicants will be notified of their status. So not quite 2 full months, but a good period of time before you'll hear back from us. So Monday, August 5th is when the grant period officially begins. And then your first reimbursement period and your progress report and invoice are going to be due January 17th. And then the final reimbursement packages are due, and then the program ends on May 30th, 2025.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to add is also that we have meetings with sort of the cohort of grant recipients throughout the period. So those are based on your schedule. That's why they're not listed here. We'll send out a doodle poll, find a time that works. And these are usually about 3 meetings throughout the grant period. We'll usually have one probably right in September. The grant starts in August. We'll have one in September. We'll have one in December ahead of the January phase 1 reimbursement period. And then we'll have another one in like April, probably April, again ahead of the second reimbursement period in May. And these will happen as a group. So all of the recipients and us will meet together. Usually what it looks like is we ask each recipient to sort of give us a little brief synopsis of their progress, if they have any questions. And in the past, we found these meetings really, really helpful because since this is like a digitization focused grant only, we found in last cycle the recipients could ask each other questions about formatting, or if they had a question about a vendor or something like that. Like this was a helpful space to sort of bring your questions and get answers from us, but also get answers from your peers, which is helpful.
So thank you for that, Tracy. Yes, the additional meetings are definitely very helpful throughout. For the advisory council, these are our current members of this year's cycle of the advisory council. For any institutions that they're affiliated with that might put in an application, just so you're all aware, they do recuse themselves from that review of their own application, of course. So they're for that conflict of interest, that's all squared away. But these are the wonderful professionals that we're lucky to have reviewing and advising for this grant cycle. So this list is also on our website. And then just to wrap up, this slide contains all the important links and contact information for Tracy and myself for the different things that you might need to refer back to. So I'm going to go to the last slide now and then turn it back over to Tracy to start fielding some questions.
Yeah. Okay, so we do have a few questions. Okay, so the first one, can we reformat from microfilm to digital or just the original materials? I don't see an issue with that. I think really the main thing is like, as long as it's reformatting to like a digital point of access, then, and it's accessible. I think this grant also, that's a question that does come up a lot with the review council of like, who is it going to be shared with? How is this going to be accessible to their community, patrons, students, whomever? So yes. To be clear, any content from New York State or New York City. New York State is fine. We had Greenberg Public Library, which is technically, well, it's Westchester. I think that it's makes a stronger case if some of the material, if there's some sort of justification in that, like this will also benefit New York City. So I feel like that can come New York City residents if they want, if they can have access to it. If I think that always makes it stronger, but it's definitely not a reason not to apply. And yeah, I just think that there's ways in writing your grant that you can sort of work that in.
In terms of DCMNY, if that question was related to the content, for the grant, like Tracy was saying, that all makes sense. But for DCMNY, there is a focus for New York City, New York related materials, a curatorial focus. But that's something we could talk about on an individual project basis. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. I think because this is um you know, New York Metro and our council specifically, there's councils all over the New York State, because our council really funds or is meant to support New York City and Westchester, there is a bit of a focus on that. So even if your materials are from other part of New York State, I think that there's probably a way in the way you write your grant to be like, this can also be accessed by, especially if it's like going into a digital format. Can one institution submit more than one application, or is there a limit to one application per institution? You know, we've never gotten that question before, but I do think, actually, Allison, you look like you're in mid-thought. What do you think?
I was thinking this could I can see how this would come up for a larger like a CUNY institution. We've received applications on different years from different CUNY affiliated institutions. So I think that yes, but I think we would want them to be distinct application submissions. So not like we also applied to it, like make sure you if you do apply or maybe like your archives division applies for one and special collections applies for another, for example, in the same institution, we would met I would say we would probably measure them as individual projects one at a time. Like there's not, I wouldn't, there wouldn't be like a penalty for submitting more than one. Just in terms of like if your own time and energies, I would say if you have multiple projects you're considering, consider the strongest one and only submit that one, if that makes sense. I don't know, Tracy, what are your thoughts about that?
No, I think that's true. Like we've definitely had CUNY institutions apply with multiple, multiple institutions within the CUNY sort of um, larger institution, but I think that the projects would have to be really distinct and not like, oh, this we're applying with two different collections, but within the same library, within the same project sort of thing.
Mhm.
To be fair, like we don't have any rules that work against that. So I think you could, but do I think that likely both would be funded? Probably not. But that's actually a really good thing for us to note and think about for next year. So thanks for asking that. Is an organization that was headquartered in New York but mostly operated abroad a sufficient New York connection for its collection to qualify? Yeah, I don't see why not. I think again, like if when you're writing this grant and if these materials are openly accessible and you can work in sort of an angle of New York City residents can also benefit from this and view it, then I think that's okay. What do you think, Allison?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And as long as like the institution submitting for the application is a Metro member located in
Yes,
the region. Yeah.
of
Mhm.
course. How many grants are you giving out? We will give a minimum probably of 3 and then a maximum of, in the past, we've given out as many as 6. So it kind of depends. Can we apply using related materials from a few different collections? Sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
I don't see why not. If we receive this grant, is Metro available for advice and questions. Yes. Yeah. As we mentioned, we'll have several meetings throughout the entire grant cycle with the group of recipients, but also Allison and I are very available and we're happy to have a meeting. So you will be supported throughout the process. I have a question. The conditions of free about the conditions of free and open access. Can we submit materials still potentially under copyright if the copyright holder is not clear? We have public programming recordings from our institution, but no releases. Would we need to obtain releases retroactively? I think this is a good question for Allison.
I would say if you're planning to share the materials in an online space and your own institution is going to share them publicly, there isn't an issue. There's definitely we supported grants for institutions that weren't 100% clear on the copyright status for their for what they were sharing online. You know, they were leaning more on the fair use understanding of copyright for some of these kinds of things, even if they don't have specific releases. That said, I would say if you have a collection comprised of video or audio recordings of interviews with individuals, we would definitely want there to be releases in place for those materials to be made available online publicly. For particularly for oral history interviews or anything that might where somebody might be responding to personal questions about their life, we would just want to make sure you're clear to submit those. A big reason that we advocate in this grant for promoting collections that have public access is because we want these to be available to as many people as possible. And we don't want to put an emphasis on funding projects for materials that might only live on a particular station in a geographic location that somebody outside might not have the ability to access for different reasons.
Do we need to submit more than one vendor quote? Or is one sufficient? In the past cycle, we had people who just submitted one vendor quote and some and were recipients. So yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's great to go with someone that you've worked with before. I'm trying to think in the past if our review council has said like, oh, that seems kind of pricey, or I think they have, but it's never. And Allison, you let me know what you think. It's never been like a concern that's like overridden their uh, uh, us giving them the grant.
Yes, yep.
Would mobile options be allowed? I work for the NYC school library system, and we would like for our different schools to digitize some of the materials like yearbooks at our well-known schools.
Uh,
Yeah, Allison, what do you think?
um, if you could clarify what you mean by mobile options,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be helpful. I just want,
Yes. Mobile sharing options. Sharing the hardware and software around the city. Deliver the hardware and software to different schools who would like to do a digitization project. Would mobile options be allowed? Yes. Sharing the hardware and software around the city. I think, and I'm assuming this will be like a digitization project, and then, those outputs, you would want to be sharing those outputs through a mobile option. In that case, that sounds great. I think that would be really interesting. And yeah, so if I've understood it properly, then yes, that is definitely allowed. Does the amount we ask for have any impact on how our project is evaluated? Our project may only cost 4,000, or should we try to expand things? Not at all. We had a project last year that was like 3,000. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's even easier because we can like add more, add more, like we can have more grant recipients than we thought. So yeah, I think you don't have to stretch it. That is definitely like go with what is most needed for your institution. And if that's under 10,000, then definitely apply with that. Is Staten Island covered by this grant? I did not see Richmond County in there.
I There are a few Staten Island-based institutions that are Metro members. So I would reach out about your particular institution if to verify membership or not as Metro membership.
Are there preferred vendors? We don't have any preferred vendors. Um, don't we? We have a list somewhere of like of vendors, but it's not comprehensive and it was just when people were asking us, do you know of any? And so we shared the list, but I think you should go with the vendors that your institution has used and trusts. Is it okay if all the expenses were in the first period by January 17th? Yes, that is fine. We had a grant application this year where it was like 90% of their funds we um, were submitted in the first half of the grant, and that was fine. I do think that they had some in their timeline. They still sort of had work for themselves, whether it was like, oh, we're going to program a thing or we're doing QC or whatever it was, just to last the grant period. But it's fine if most of your funds are submitted in that first half. Was the April 8th deadline to apply for a membership a hard deadline? If so, is this grant only made available once a year, or will there be another opportunity to apply for a Metro grant later in the year? It is a once a year grant, like the likely if I want to say if, but I think this is a pretty popular grant, so I think we will run it again next year, but it will be in like it's one cycle per year. So I assume by, summer, similar time like August 2024, 2025 will be like the next cycle will start. So it is once a year, and the April 8th deadline isn't, I would say if you're still interested in applying for this grant and becoming a Metro member, do go like apply, or it's not an application, but it's really like a form. Start that process now or within the next week or so, because, and this is really just because we know the admin person who's on the other side of this, and we want to give her time to process the applications or your documents, or the form really. So please do that sooner rather than later. If we win this grant, will Metro want the digital files to be shared on their own network attached server, or do we keep the files? You keep the files. The files are for you, but DCMNY is like another access point that we offer. And it is not required, but it is strongly encouraged. So that's up to you. But no, the files are yours. This is, meant to help your community, patron-based students, whomever. Do you have a list of preferred vendors anywhere? Not on our website. We do have a document of vendors, and this is not this has just kind of been from people who reach out to us in the years and have asked us about vendors. But if you all are interested, maybe we can share that, Allison.
Yeah, I can find that.
Okay. Is building a website a requirement once we digitize our materials? No, I don't know, but usually people have some sort of, or institutions have like a way to share this information or these digital assets, I would say. So that is something to think about while you're like, how will you be sharing this? And usually that is through like a website. Is 500 word limit for the project description or the entire application? Not for the entire application. It's definitely for the project description. If you have any troubles with the application, because you should be able to write as much as you need to write for each question. And also we do have the PDF copy, which let me quickly put into the chat because I think it's really helpful, and I think that people should use it while you're thinking about applying. So we have this PDF copy. These are the exact questions that are in the Google form. I would make a copy of that and I would write in all your answers ahead of time in this copy and then just copy and paste them into the application when you're ready. So that's how, instead of, opening the form or closing the form and kind of just, I would do it in advance in a separate Google Doc. And then once you're ready and everything looks great, just do it that way. Does that mean if the collection is planning to host on another site, we can also put the collection on DCMNY? Yes, absolutely. That's kind of what DCMNY is for. Like, it can be your only point of, I would say it's meant to be in addition to whatever point of entry you are using to share these materials to your community. So it's supposed to be like a second point of entry. Yeah. Allison, do you have anything to add to that?
Some institutions for smaller institutions or maybe their own institutional repository sites or digital collection sites, they don't consider their materials a curatorial fit. So DCMNY happens to be their only platform. But in terms of having your own website or repository, it's not a requirement that you have to have that yourself necessarily, but we part of the application includes how are you going to maintain and do preservation for these files longer term, these digitized materials, and then how are you going to provide public access to them? So it's all kind of interrelated, but you don't have to have only DCMNY or only a local. You could have both, but just we're going to be considering it as part of your application. How are you going to steward these materials over time? How are you going to provide public access to them?
We are unsure if some real / disc / gray autographs have materials on both sides or damage that would incur more fees. Is it okay if quotes and budgets have ranges or some uncertainty? Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that as long as it's not over the 10,000 limit, we did have an institution who, with digitization, made a bit of a error, and then it was like over the allotted amount, and their institution sort of had to kick in a little bit of the rest. So it's just something to think about, and writing your application of what is probably you know, the highest amount that could go. And if it does go over, are we ready? Like, is your institution, can they kick in a little bit if it's like over $10,000 or whatever? But yeah, I think it makes sense that there would be some range, especially if you're not sure of the condition. So we are the sole owner of 2 microfilm collections, involve 2 newspaper in northern Westchester. They're not available anywhere online. We would like to digitize them. We're wondering if, yes, like that is definitely something we would digitize as long as you are a Metro member, which then, and it sounds like you are because you're in Westchester, then yes, absolutely. Can you use this grant to hire interns from local library schools? Yes, absolutely. We've had a lot of people hire students for some of the work that's involved. As long as one thing that does come up is payment of students and interns and graduate students, and making sure, I feel like with our councils, it's a lot of like, is that a a good amount? Is that sufficient?
Mm.
So it's something
Mhm.
to think about, of like, hiring a graduate student on like $18 an hour doesn't seem like enough for them. And I also know that there's some institutional things related of, this is how much my institution says, and that's fine. But I will say that has come up in previous review councils of, how much are you paying that? How much are you paying the people who are working on this grant? And so it's something to think about. But yes, definitely you can hire local library, local students. I think that's great. So are there any preferred vendors specifically for digitizing text materials? No. I think a lot of people use Backstage in the past. That's the one that comes up a lot, but there are no specific vendors. Use the one that you think that your institution has worked with and trusts is the main thing. For the grant proposal, shall we specify the PPI or scan resolution?
I mean, it doesn't hurt. There is a section on the application to specify like the technical, your technical background, how the materials are going to be digitized, and we do consider if institutions are going to digitize them at a good quality, that's something that some kind is a weighting factor.
We have two more questions. Okay, one on Q&A. Can we use the grant money for a trainer and how to use the hardware and software? I think yes, as long as long as digitization is like the main process of that, and that is like, correlated to that part of the grant, then yes, I think definitely. I think this is all the questions that we have. And if we haven't, please put them in the chat. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all your applications. And if you have any other questions for us that come to mind, later on, we are available. But again, the program guide and the website is where we pulled all that information from. Once you submit the grant, that's pretty much it. You'll hear from us in July after that. So, but thank you all for your thoughtful questions. I hope you all have a great day. And yeah, email us if you have any other questions.